Assalamualaikum and good morning everyone. My name is Muhammad Hadif bin Zulkifle and today I will be presenting my research on self-motivation and its influence on leadership effectiveness among millennials. First, let's look at the importance of leadership. Good leadership is the foundation for any company to grow. However, being a great leader isn't just about finishing tasks. It is really about inner skills like emotional strength and mindset. Right now, we are facing a generational challenge. Millennials are taking over management roles all around the world. But studies show that many young leaders find it hard to handle high stress and complex team relationships over a long period. Why is this happening? There is a huge gap in current practices. All leadership training usually focus on outside rewards like money or strict company rules. These all methods completely ignore the mental and emotional support that millennial leaders actually need today. To help solve this, my research focuses on self-motivation. This is the inner drive that pushes a person to achieve their goals and overcome problems, even without outside rewards or pressure. Therefore, the main objective of my study is to uncover exactly how this self-motivation affects the leadership effectiveness of millennials professionals right here in Kuala Lumpur. Now, let's move on to the literature review and the theory behind this study. First, how do we measure leadership effectiveness today? In the past, companies mostly look at profit margins, but today, being a good leader requires high emotional intelligence and the ability to adapt to different people. Research shows that when millennial leaders struggle, it is almost never because they lack technical skills. Instead, it is usually because they lack these inner psychological skills. This brings us to the core driver of my research, self-motivation. Simply put, this is the inner spark that pushes a person to reach their goals, even when there are no outside rewards. Studies show that highly self-motivated managers have stronger emotional resilience. This means they can handle high-stress situations calmly and solve problems without constantly relying on their bosses for help. To support this idea, my study is built on the transformational leadership theory. A major part of this theory is inspirational motivation. The logic is simple. A leader must be highly motivated themselves before they can successfully inspire their team to do great work. Based on all of this, I built my conceptual framework. It is very straightforward. I am testing my independent variable, which is self-motivation, to see exactly how it impacts my dependent variable, which is leadership effectiveness. Now, I will explain the methodology, which is the step-by-step process of how I conducted this research. For this study, I chose a quantitative approach. This means I used a survey to collect numerical data. My goal was to see exactly how my independent variable, self-motivation, affects my dependent variable, leadership effectiveness. My target population was millennial professionals currently working here in Kuala Lumpur. To gather the data, I used a simple random sampling method. I successfully collected 389 completed responses. This is a very strong and reliable sample size because it is higher than the standard academic requirement of 384 people. To collect this data efficiently, I created a structured digital survey using Google Forms. I then distributed this survey to the professionals through email and social media platforms. Once all the responses were in, I analyzed the data using IBM SPSS statistics software. Before looking at the final results, I first tested the reliability of my survey questions. I am happy to report that both of my main variables scored very high on the Cronbunch Alpha scale, well above 0.76. This proved that my survey was highly dependable and perfectly suited for this study. Next, let's look at the instruments and measurements used together and test the data. To collect the responses, I used a structured questionnaire. As you can see in the first table, the survey was measured using a standard 5-point Likert scale. This allowed respondents to clearly rank their feelings from 1, which stands for strongly disagree, all the way up to 5, which stands for strongly agree. This method makes the data very clear and easy to translate into numbers. However, before diving into the main findings, it was crucial to test if my survey questions were actually reliable. To do this, I conducted a reliability test, as shown in the second table. We measured this using a score called Cronbunch Alpha. The general rule in research is that any score above 0.70 is considered good and reliable. I am happy to share that my survey performed exceptionally well. The questions for self-motivation scored 0.857 and the questions for leadership effectiveness scored 0.761. Because both scores are well above the 0.70 baseline, it proves that the survey instrument is highly consistent, trustworthy, and perfectly ready for the final analysis. Now, let's dive into the first part of the findings and discussion. Here, we have 3 key tables that summarize the data we collected. Starting with the demographic profile. In the first table, we had a total of 389 respondents. The majority of them were between 25 and 34 years old, and 71% of them hold a bachelor's degree. This confirms that we successfully reached our exact target group, young, educated, millennial professionals. Moving to the second table, we have the descriptive analysis. This shows us the average scores from the 5-point Likert scale. Both self-motivation and leadership effectiveness scored an average mean of around 3.6 and 3.7. This is a very positive result. It tells us that overall, the respondents already possess a fairly high level of self-motivation and rate their leadership skills positively. Finally, the third table shows the most important test, the Pearson correlation analysis. This test measures how closely our two main variables are connected. The result gave us an R value of 0.674. In statistics, this proves there is a strong and positive relationship between the two variables. The significance level is also highly significant at less than 0.001. In simple words, the data clearly proves that as a millennial's self-motivation goes up, their leadership effectiveness goes up significantly right alongside it. Moving on to the final set of tables, we dive a little deeper into how much self-motivation actually impacts leadership. The first table here is our model summary. The most important number to look at is the R square value, which is 0.455. In simple terms, this means that roughly 45.5% of a millennial's leadership effectiveness comes directly from their own self-motivation. The other half is influenced by outside factors like company training or work environment. The second table is the ANOVA test. The main takeaway here is the significance level at the far right. Because the score is less than 0.001, it proves mathematically that our testing model is highly accurate and a perfect fit for this data. Finally, we have the most important table of the presentation, the summary of hypothesis testing. For hypothesis 3, we propose that self-motivation significantly influences leadership effectiveness among millennials. As you can see, our significance score is well below the standard 0.05 limit. Specifically, it is less than 0.003. Because of this, hypothesis 3 is officially accepted. This gives us concrete scientific proof that a leader's inner drive makes a massive difference in how successfully they guide their teams. Finally, we have reached the conclusion and recommendations of this study. The core finding of my research is very clear. Self-motivation is a must-have asset for millennial leaders. The data proves that when a young professional has a high inner drive, it naturally leads to better management skills, more confident decision making, and stronger resilience when facing tough challenges at work. However, it is important to remember the bigger picture. Self-motivation does not work alone. To truly succeed, a leader's inner drive must be supported by a positive company culture and strong teamwork. So, what is the main takeaway for companies today? My recommendation is that organizations need to update how they train their future leaders. Instead of only teaching technical or hard skills, companies must start building programs that grow a person's inner drive, emotional resilience, and goal-oriented behavior. By focusing on these internal qualities, companies can successfully build a highly capable and confident generation of millennial leaders. That brings us to the end of my presentation. I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone for your time and attention today. And I also want to give a special thank you to my lecturer, Dr. Nurul Hafiza binti Ramli, for your guidance and support throughout this whole research project. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.